In this video I will show you how to create a circular speedometer using a couple of spinners, arcs, scales and labels. When the GUI is ready, what we will need to do is save the changes and build. When the build is done, if you go to your project folder, it will create all these C files. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to copy all these over to the Arduino project which I created earlier with the same name. So you paste everything here. Now if you go to the Arduino sketch, you will see all the files have been loaded. The first change we will need to make is in the image file. For my system, I have to replace all this with include LVGL.h, and because I want the GUI to start at this position, I will need to make some more changes on the screen.c file. So the first change I made is in the arc behind the scale. I set the start position to 180, which means and then it should end at 90 degrees, and the value range is to be from 0 to 240. The second change I made is to the scale, the outer scale, to start at 180 degrees and then finish at 270 degrees. So they are all at the same positions, the arc and the scale, and the value range should be 0 to 240. Same for the inner scale we created. Start at 180, finish at 270 degrees, and then the value range for that is 0 to 150. The ticks remain the same, as is total ticks is 31, and display a major tick every 3 tick. Then the inner arc, similar change, start at 180, finish at 90 degrees, and the value range to be 240. And for the labels, to position the miles per hour label, I had to update and set it to 120 and 180. Same for kilometers per hour, 110 or 200. Now simply click upload and wait and see the file. In the Arduino sketch, we need to make some changes because we want to handle the events that's generated. First, I created a function to mock the data. So you will just change the value randomly. Then register an event handler for arc speedometer. This is the event handler. The event to handle LV event value change, and we're not passing any GUI objects to update because we will get it from the objects structs. The event handler, all it's doing is getting the code, logging it, verifying that the event is the correct event, and simply updating the speedometers. There's 2 of them, and then setting the label in the middle to show the value, and nothing else. All it's doing is calling in the main loop. It's just mocking the data and manually triggering a event for arc speedometer. Without this line, there won't be any event to handle, so nothing will get updated. So this line is important. Now if you click upload and wait a few seconds, you'll see the final result. final result. After you view the final result, for those of you who are interested, I will show you how to create the GUI. First, create a new project. Give it a name. I called it EEZ_circular speedometer. Select the version 9.0. Create. Do the usual settings. First, we set the screen size to 320 by 240. Set the LVGL location to the correct path. In my one is LVGL.h. Also, we set the main panel screen size to 320 by 240. First of all, set the main screen background to black. So click on main, default background color. Just drag this to the corner. First, we remove that label. We don't need it. Click on it and click delete. Add a spinner to act as the outer border of the speedometer. Set the size to 235 by 235. Centralize it. Now we will update some of the properties, the styles. So we set the main default arc width to 3. We can also set the color optionally. I'll just set to red. Now, as you can see, the indicator part is thicker than the main part, so we'll set the indicator to 3 or 4. It's up to you. I set to 4. Set the color. This is just for design. Also give it a name. I call it outer border circle. Now add a second spinner, like an inner spinner. So set the size to 225 by 225. Centralize it. Now set the the default arcs width to 2 or 3, and now we will you can see the indicator needs to be updated as well. So click on indicator default and set that to 2 or 3. You can also optionally change the color if you want. Also give it a name so we know which spinner we're working on. Now create an arc, give it a name. I call it arc behind the scale. Set the size to 235 by 235. Oops, 235 by 235. Set the range to between 0 and 240. And 240. You can leave the default as 25 or set it to 0. Note an arc has 2 arcs. So one is the background arc and one is the indicator arcs. So we will need to change the properties of the style of the arcs. So first we'll change the main arc. So click on main default, set the opacity to 0, so that's not visible, the background. And now we go and change the indicator arc. We set that to something like 30, and we don't want a rounded corner for the indicator, so we'll click on rounded, remove that. Also we set the opacity to something like 45. So what will happen is when we run it, you see that like a opaque indicator appears. So I'll set the color of the indicator to something like yellow. So the indicator arc, default arc color, set to yellowish. Now if you run it, you see, yeah, the other thing we want to do is we don't want the knob to be shown, so we will make the opacity of this to 0. So we click on the arc, go to the knob part, click on default, and then in this case it's the background, set it to 0. The arc will disappear. Now if you run it, you get like a very, you can set the opacity to something lower if you want. Now add a scale, give it a name, and then set the size to 210 by 210. Centralize it. Note at the moment it's just straight, we don't want that, we want a round inner, so the numbers are inside. If you do round outer, so the numbers appear outside. So in this case we want the indicator to be inside the speedometer. So set the range from 0 to 240, and the number of ticks, you can increase it to 61 to make it more of the major ticks appear, indicators appear on the speedometer, or you can reduce it to 31. Now we will add some styling to the scale. So first of all, we go to the main part, default the arc, that's the line that goes all the way around. You set the width to 3, set the color to something you like. I changed it to blue. The other thing is the item parts. These are the little small lines here. I don't want to display the small lines, so I'm going to remove them. Click on default, go to position and size, remove it. Also now we will set the indicator star. This is the number and the length of these major ticks. Maybe change it to 8. Alright, 10 looks fine. Now we will change the color of the line. There you go. And now if you want to change the color of the numbers, you have to click on indicator default and then text. You can change the color of the text as well. So red looks alright. Add a new scale, give it a name, set the size to 170 by 170, set the range from 0 to 150, set the total number of ticks first of all set these to round inner, centralize it. Now set the total number of ticks to 31 and show 5 show major ticks every 5, so every time it counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First of all, we will need to set the main line opacity to 0. So we go to main default. It's an arc. Set the opacity, set it to 0. Also, what we'll need to do is set the text color to something more brighter. And the other thing we'll have to do is the line width, so it makes the line appear near the text appear near to the center. So we'll change it to 33, and also instead of every 5 ticks, show major tick every 3. Now let's change the items. So in this case, the items, let's change it to length to 10 and the line color to and the indicator, we will set the opacity to 0. Yep. One thing I forgot to mention was for the inner scale, we need to change the font to something smaller. So if you go to indicator default, so click on the scale, indicator default, and then text font, and set a smaller size, 8 or 10. Now let's add an arc that's going to be in the center. Set the size to 100 by 100. Give it a name. Drag it down to the middle. The arc value should be set to be between 0 and 240. So we set it here 0 to 240. Obviously we don't want to show the background, so we set the background opacity to, because it's an arc, it's not the background. Arc has 2 arcs, remember, one for the background, the main part, and one for the indicator part. So in this case, default, we have to go to arc. Set the background opacity to 0, so it doesn't show the background. Also, what we need to do is we need to set the knob value to 0. So click on the arc default. In this case, it's background opacity to 0. There you go, it's gone. Add an image so we can set it as the background of the arc. So we click on add here, give it a name, select the image. I will add the image in the assets folder, so it will be included in the GitHub. Set to RGB 565. OK. Now if you click on the arc, the indicator arc, So indicator default arc, add the image. Here you can see it's been added. If you run it, what will happen is as you rotate it, it will show the image instead of the blue background. Now we don't want to show this round circular corners, so what we'll need to do is we have to go to default. So for the main part, default miscellaneous, set radius to 0. Same for the indicator part, click on that, radio set to 0. Oh sorry, it's the arc rounded to 0, default arc rounded set to 0. We will also need to set the angles for the arc. So we click on the arc, I'm going to set to 135 to 45. Starts at 135, so 0 is here, 135, and then it ends at 45. So that means it will end from 0 to 45 here. So it goes all the way around. I'm going to do the same for this arc behind scale. I did it 135 to 45. Add a label to show the number, so as it goes up and down it shows the position of the scale here. Set the size to 71 by 33 and set the text to 000. The other thing we have to do is to set the style, so click on the main part, default text, set the color, set the opacity to 105 or something lower, and then the font size I set to 32. The other thing is this is the background label, so we also need to create a foreground label with the same properties. The only difference for this one is same size, 71, 32, 33. Set the text, and then in the style main default set the text color to something else, and then the font size is the same. The only difference is no opacity. So, and align the text to the center, so as the value changes from 1 to 100 it doesn't jump around. I added two more labels, one to just show MP/H miles per hour, which is next to the small numbers, and then for kilometers per hour just next to the red numbers.